Hello, my name is Olive. I'm 92 years old, and I'm so glad you're here. Over the years, life has taught me many lessons, and one of the most important is something I call sink or swim. Now you might be wondering what I mean by that. Well, the truth is, it came from one of the hardest seasons of my life. And today I want to tell you the story of how those 3 simple words changed everything for me. 21 years ago, I lost my husband. He passed away after a long illness, 2 years to be exact. I never imagined I would lose him like that. You see, I met him when I was just 16 years old. We grew up together. We built our lives together. We raised our family together. For most of my life, we were inseparable. We made decisions together. We solved problems together. We laughed together. Of course, like every marriage, we had our challenges, but with patience, perseverance, and the grace of God, we always found our way through. He was a good man, a very good man, and we believed we had many more years ahead of us. But life doesn't always unfold the way we expect. When he became sick, I remember feeling a strange kind of denial. Even while he was ill, part of me kept thinking, this cannot be real. This cannot be happening to us. I simply could not imagine life without him. How could I survive without the person who had been beside me for almost my entire life? But eventually, the day came when he passed away, and when he did, my whole world changed. It felt like I had not only lost my husband, I had lost my best friend, my companion, my partner in everything. And in many ways, I felt like I had lost half of myself. I suddenly had to face a life I had never planned for, a life alone. There were so many things I didn't know how to do by myself, so many small things we had always handled together. When you spend decades with someone, you build your life around them, and when they are gone, the silence can be overwhelming. The first year was very difficult, but I was fortunate to have a strong family around me. My children checked in on me often. My family supported me. They tried to lift my spirits. But as time went on, something changed. When the second year came, I began to feel something deeper, a kind of hopelessness. My will to live began to fade. I was going through the motions of life, but I was not living. Nothing brought me joy anymore. Things I once loved no longer interested me. I stopped going out. I stopped making plans. I simply existed, and my heart was broken, truly broken. Eventually, my family encouraged me to visit the doctor. They were worried about me, so I went. And if I'm honest, I expected him to give me medication. I thought perhaps he would prescribe something to help me feel better. But instead, he gave me something much more powerful. He gave me a sentence that stayed with me for the rest of my life. After listening to me, he looked at me very calmly and said, "Olive, I have seen many people in situations like yours, and I'm going to tell you one simple truth. You have a decision to make. You can either sink or you can swim. Then he explained something I never forgot. He said, every morning when you wake up, before you even get out of bed, you need to ask yourself one question. Am I going to sink today, or am I going to swim? And he told me something else. He said, right now, Olive, you are sinking. But if you begin to swim, even a little, day by day, it will get easier. When I left that doctor's office, those words echoed in my mind. Sink or swim. The next morning when I woke up, before I even got out of bed, I asked myself the question, am I going to sink today or am I going to swim? And I decided I would try to swim, just a little. The doctor had told me not to rush. He said swimming doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be small, very small. So I began with little things. I forced myself to go for short walks. Some days it felt like a great effort just to step outside the door, but I did it. I started cooking again, even though it felt strange cooking just for myself. I went back into my garden. Gardening had always been something I loved, but after my husband passed, I had stopped completely. At first it was difficult. Everything reminded me of him. But slowly, I began to plant things again. And something interesting happened. Months later, I began to see new flowers blooming in the garden. And I remember standing there one day looking at them. These little plants I had placed in the soil months earlier were now growing, reaching up, becoming beautiful. And I suddenly thought, perhaps God is planting something new in my life as well. Perhaps, just like those flowers, something new could grow again. By the 3rd year after losing my husband, I began swimming a little harder. I decided to join some local groups. Now, I must tell you, this was not easy for me. I felt shy. I felt awkward. At my age, joining groups felt almost ridiculous. I remember thinking to myself, what am I doing here? But I pushed myself, because every morning I still asked the same question, sink or swim? The first group I joined was a painting class. I had always wanted to try painting. Now, I must admit, I was not the best painter in the room, not even close. But I loved the process. I loved the colors. And most of all, I loved the conversations. At the end of each session, we would sit together and have tea, and I began to enjoy those moments. Later, I joined another group for knitting and crochet. I already knew how to knit, but again, it was the social part I enjoyed, talking with people, laughing, feeling part of something again. But the real turning point came when I joined a walking group. At first, I felt incredibly nervous, but those walks changed everything. I met wonderful women. Some of them were widows like me. They understood the loneliness. They understood the grief. And slowly those women became my friends, real friends. Before long, we began going away together for little weekends. Then one day we even planned a cruise, something I never imagined I would do at my age. And for the first time in years, I found myself laughing again. Real laughter, joy. I realized something very important. I was swimming, not sinking, swimming. And the strange thing was, the more I swam, the easier it became. Life slowly began to open again. I joined a gentle dance group for seniors. Can you imagine? At my age? But it was wonderful. We danced, we laughed, and those friends became like a second family to me. Now here I am at 92 years old, and when I look back over the last 21 years, I see something clearly. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it softened. My heart slowly healed. And because I chose to swim, I experienced so many beautiful things. My garden today is full of color and life. I have knitted and crocheted countless little outfits for my great-grandchildren. I have visited countries I never thought I would see, and I have made friendships that I treasure deeply. If I had chosen to sink, I might not be here today. Those extra 21 years of life have been a gift, all because of one simple decision: sink or swim. So if you are listening to me today and you are going through a difficult time, perhaps you've lost someone, perhaps your marriage ended, perhaps life has thrown you into a season you never expected, I want you to remember those words: sink or swim. You do not have to swim fast. You do not have to swim perfectly. Just swim a little, day by day, step by step, and little by little, life will begin to open again. Joy will return, and one day you may look back, just like I do now, and realize that choosing to swim was one of the best decisions you ever made.